Hi, I'm Ashley.
And I'm Mark, and we are the virtual compliance representatives of Makati Medical Center.
We are here today to enter into a partnership with you. Why? Because you are a valuable member of Makati Medical Center.
Through your help, support, and cooperation, we are going to build a culture of compliance and ethical behavior. Together, we will create an organization which we can all be proud of.
Let's define the values that we stand for. Service excellence, providing competent, appropriate, safe, and responsive healthcare services that result to positive patient outcome and highest level of satisfaction of patients and colleagues. Integrity, demonstrating sound moral and ethical principles at work, never compromising the name and ethical standards of the hospital. Professionalism, upholding the code of conduct of the hospital and ethical standards of one's profession, consistently demonstrating competence in the performance of one's duties. Compassion, showing genuine concern and empathy through words and actions that lead to enhanced well-being of patients and colleagues. Teamwork, collaborating harmoniously and respectfully with a team towards a common goal.
To imbibe and live up to these values and consequently build an ideal organization, we have crafted 8 policies for hospital-wide implementation. These policies apply to everyone who is connected to MakatiMed, whether as employee, consultant, officer, director, partner, vendor, medical staff, or any service provider that includes you. Briefly, these are the 8 policies. 1. Anti-bribery and anti-corruption. 2. Conflict of interest. 3. Whistleblowing. 4. Gifts, donations, sponsorship, and grants. 5. Government interactions. 6. Third-party risk management. 7. Petty cash. 8. Official travel and per diem.
Can you identify what is common among the 8 policies? That's right. They all seek to prevent the incidents of corruption, bribery, unjust behavior, fraud, and other illegal or unethical behavior. In other words, these policies compel and encourage us to do what is right and good, and ensure that we operate and transact within the bounds of law.
Now, let's get an overview of the 8 policies and how each one is material to our overall goal of building an ethical and compliant organization that should not, in any way, be associated with bribery, corruption, or any wrongdoing.
The main and primary document in championing our cause is the Anti-Bribery and Anti-Corruption Policy, or the ABAC policy. This policy spells out what we are trying to achieve, that is, to have zero tolerance of bribery and corruption. How is this achieved? First, the ABAC policy outrightly states that MakatiMed will not tolerate bribery, kickbacks, or corruption of any kind, directly or through third parties. Second, it identifies aspects of MakatiMed's operation where there is high likelihood of abuse or the commission of wrongdoing. Then, it prescribes guidelines and procedures to mitigate the incidence of bribery and corruption on those specific areas. Third, it encourages and requires covered hospital staff and all stakeholders to report any incidents of corruption and wrongdoing, and provides protection in favor of the whistleblower or the one who reports the violation of the policies.
In general, these are the overarching principles of the ABAC policy. 1. Prohibits the giving or offering of anything of value in exchange of any business advantage. 2. Prohibits the solicitation or acceptance of similar payments by hospital staff. 3. Prohibits the engagement of third parties to do what is prohibited by the policy. 4. Provides rules and tools that are perceptible by common sense in determining whether an action or proposed course of action can be seen as inappropriate. To signify your commitment and adherence to prevention of corruption, the ABAC policy requires you to fill out and submit the Employee Anti-Corruption Policy Certification to MakatiMed's Compliance Department.
Through your submission of this form, you certify that 1. You have received, read, and fully understood MakatiMed's ABAC policy. 2. You will agree to comply with its provisions. 3. You will participate in the anti-corruption training to be conducted by Makati Med on a periodic basis. 4. You understand that the failure to comply with the policy and other applicable anti-corruption laws may result in immediate investigation. 5. You will report to the compliance officer if you have knowledge of any deviations from or violation of the policy and other applicable anti-corruption laws. You should complete and deliver the form to your compliance officer following this session.
Now, let's discuss the other policies. Since the ABAC policy identified aspects of company operations where there is high likelihood of abuse or corruption, the next 6 policies will specifically deal with those critical areas. For this session, we will only discuss the salient points of these policies. You may expect a more detailed discussion of each of the policy in subsequent sessions. These are the 6 critical aspects of our operations where we should exercise greater vigilance.
First is Makati Med's dealings with the government officials. Since dealing with regulatory bodies of government officials is an integral part of our business operations, we have adopted the Government Interactions Policy. This provides the objectives, general behavior, limitations, and compliance requirements when we deal with government institutions and hospital staff. This will ensure that the company remains independent of any government affiliation, and our actions will be characterized with utmost integrity.
To efficiently comply with this policy, we must first understand the definition of government official. Under the ABAC and its related policy, the term government official encompasses a broad category of people which include the following. 1. All officers and employees of government department in all levels and subdivisions, including officials of public international organizations like Red Cross. 2. Officers and employees of government or controlled corporations. 3. Family members and close associates of individuals identified on items 1 and 2.
4. Healthcare professionals or HCPs who are practicing in government hospitals or any government agency. For the last category, however, they will only be considered as government officials when any of these 3 conditions apply. The HCP has an official decision-making role. The HCP has the responsibility for performing regulatory inspections, government authorizations, or licensing. Or the HCP has the actual or perceived capacity to influence or make decisions with the potential to affect the business of Makati Med. Now that we know who are considered as government officials, we should be aware of the best practices when interacting with government bodies and officials.
Here are the things that we should do. 1. Act professionally, responsibly, and with honesty, integrity, and transparency. 2. Pay legitimate government-related expenses only. 3. Maintain relationships with government officials in accordance with applicable law.
These are the things that we should not do. 1. Offer, promise, or give anything of value to influence a government official. 2. Offer gifts of cash or cash equivalent. 3. Pay for travel accommodation or other expenses unless such expenses relate to legitimate business purpose and are allowed under applicable law. 4. Use third parties to circumvent the relevant requirements or prohibitions. 5. Use company assets for the personal use of government officials or any of their guests.
Gifts, donations, sponsorship, and grants. Second critical area of operation is on the provision of gifts and hospitality, such as meals, entertainment, travels, and accommodation. We recognize that gifts and hospitality can be an important part of developing and fostering business relationships. However, the use of gifts and hospitality as business tools should be regulated to prevent impropriety, including the appearance of impropriety or the creation of undue and improper obligation on the part of the recipient. Thus, we have adopted the gifts, donations, sponsorships, and grants policy.
In general, these are the indicators that a gift is acceptable or considered and may be openly received as a token gift. 1. The gift does not involve cash or cash equivalent gifts like gift cards, store cards, or gambling chips. 2. The gift permitted under both local law and the guidance of the recipient's employer as approved by Makati Med CEO or medical director, if Makati Med staff or department is the recipient. 3. The gift is presented openly with complete transparency. 4. The gift is properly recorded in the Makati Med's books and records. 5. The gift is provided as a token of esteem, courtesy, or in return for hospitality and should comport with local custom. 6. The item costs not more than 5,000 pesos. 7. The gift is not from a supplier or potential supplier of Makati Med. For instances when these conditions are not met, the gift may not be given or when offered must be politely declined.
In evaluating gifts, the following are the questions we must ask. Can the gift be considered as a token gift? May the giving or receiving of the gift be reasonably assumed to create an improper obligation on the part of the recipient? Is the gift of such nature not prohibited under the policy? These are some of the practical examples of what are allowable and what are improper. Noteworthy is that promotional items of nominal value given or received as a Christmas giveaway is acceptable. In every case, we must always be convinced that the receipt of the gift is not contrary to morals or good customs. These are the questions we should ask in evaluating the reasonableness of a hospitality such as meals or entertainment. Is there a legitimate business purpose? Considering the circumstances, can the giving of meals, entertainment, or hospitality be seen as potentially influencing an outcome or creating an improper obligation on the part of the recipient? Is the nature of the activity involved appropriate? These are some practical examples of what are allowable and what are improper when it comes to hospitality. In every case, we must always be convinced that the provision or receipt of a gift or hospitality is not contrary to morals or good customs.
Also, these are the things that we must remember in relation to gifts and hospitality. Do not accept or give gifts, entertainment, or hospitality that may impair or be seen as potentially impairing the recipient's objectivity in the performance of his or her duties. Do not provide gifts, entertainment, or hospitality as a means of circumventing the anti-bribery and anti-corruption policies. The use of personal funds by any covered hospital staff does not exempt him or her from the prohibitions and requirements under the policies. Hospital staff who is giving or receiving gifts or hospitality must report the same by filling out the gift registry form within 3 business days after giving or receiving gifts, donations, sponsorship, and grant, and submit to the compliance department.
Another critical area is when the company makes political contributions and charitable donations. We must remember that all transfers of value to charitable donations, sponsorship, and grants must always comply with the following minimum standards to be valid. 1. The transfer of value is for a legitimate and valid purpose. 2. The transfer of values is proportionate to the need or benefit received. 3. There is no perceived or actual conflict of interest. And 4. The transaction or activity and relevant records are maintained in a transparent, fair, and open manner, and that all transactions should be properly recorded and supported in the financial books and records of Makati Med. Medical staff as independent practitioners are not covered by this policy on gifts, donations, sponsorship, and grants, except in situations when they are representing Makati Med or the clinical department or in a position to influence the procurement of Makati Med. Medical staff is expected to abide by the Philippine Code of Ethics of the Medical Profession and the Mexico City Principles.
Third-party management policy. The third critical area is in dealings with third parties, which include vendors, consultants, contractors, and other service providers. To define the process associated with the management of Makati Med's third-party relationships, we have adopted the Third-Party Management Policy, or TPM policy.
These are the principles that we must keep in mind when dealing with third parties. First, The importance of conducting due diligence to know the third party and the risks involved in dealing with them. Second, to engage them only after being convinced that the risk posed by their engagement is acceptable. Third, to ensure that third parties adhere to our policies against bribery and corruption. This means that contracts with third parties must include the mandatory ABAC clauses. Fourth, to conduct regular monitoring so we can be assured of the continuing qualification and adherence of the third party to applicable policies. These are the points to consider as regards to the conduct of due diligence concerning third parties.
In all instances, every third party must accomplish the third-party due diligence questionnaire and certification. Additional due diligence must be conducted in these two instances: when the third party is considered high risk as defined in the policy, and when the hospital staff dealing with a third party becomes aware of a red flag. In instances when the MPHHI group procurement has already conducted its own due diligence, Makati Med has the option to rely on the due diligence conducted by MPHHI.
Now, what should be done when a red flag is discovered following the conduct of a due diligence? Well, the discovery of red flag does not mean that something illegal or improper has or is happening. It should prompt us to do further inquiry or investigation. If despite further inquiry or investigation, the red flag continues to exist and is not resolved, remedied, or corrected, then our appropriate response is to not sign a contract with such third party or to terminate the engagement in accordance with the terms of the applicable contract.
In contracting with third parties, these are the things that we should do. 1. Always include the mandatory ABAC contractual clauses in the applicable agreement. And 2. Ensure that the third party is aware of the organization's policies and has signed the third-party compliance affirmation. If the third party is a government agency, we should also ensure that the contract is awarded in accordance with the applicable laws, such as the Government Procurement Reform Act and its implementing rules and regulation. Finally, we should ensure that regular monitoring procedure is in place to ensure that breaches are addressed via corrective action and third parties are informed of any information that may impact their risk classification.
The fourth area of concern is the use of petty cash. While petty cash funds can provide a convenient and efficient way to pay for small expenses, such form of cash disbursement may be prone to misuse and expose the company to the risk of theft. To encourage an effective administration and internal control of petty cash handling operation throughout the company, we have adopted the petty cash policy.
These are some limitations in the use of petty cash. 1. Petty cash expenditure should be restricted to those purchases where there is no practical alternative method of payment. For example, patient travel or purchase of small value items. 2. The use of petty cash should not be a means for bypassing other existing expenditure controls in the company. It should not be used for payroll, staff travel, or other expenses where it is possible that tax implications may apply. 3. Petty cash should not be used for the purchase of electrical items, which will need appropriate health and safety checks. 4. Loans or advances to employees for personal uses from petty cash funds are forbidden.
Official travel and per diem. The fifth critical area is the availment of business-related travels by hospital staff. Expenses incurred on foreign and local travels are actual, reasonable, and necessary in carrying out the official business of Makati Med. We have adopted the official travel and per diem policy.
These are the salient points of the travel policy. 1. Covered hospital staff shall submit expense reports timely and accurately for all business expense reimbursements. 2. In compliance with relevant tax rules and regulations, all travel and hospitality expenses shall be supported by original copy of official receipts and or other similar documents showing all the needed details and issued in the name of Makati Medical Center. 3. To avoid the risk that the business travel by a covered hospital staff may be construed as an employee's benefit, BIR requires that travel expense be supported by appropriate documents, such as official invitations or communications for business conventions from the host organization or entity abroad, and calendar invites for business meetings.
We all know humans' inclination to prioritize personal interest. Whenever our personal interest competes with that of Mahatimid or the interest of a third party, a conflict of interest situation arises. When left unchecked, a conflict of interest may lead the hospital staff to commit acts that are against the principles of honesty, impartiality, integrity, and efficiency. Thus, we have adopted the conflict of interest policy to set out the company's approach and guidelines on identifying and disclosing any actual or perceived conflict of interest or COI situation.
These are the salient points laid down by the COI policy. First, all hospital staff should make required disclosures in the form prescribed annually. This form should be submitted to the Office of the Compliance Officer on or before the 31st of January each year. Second, we should remember that hospital staff is prohibited to engaging in any activity that may give rise or may be perceived to give rise to a conflict of interest. Finally, when such situation may not be avoided, full written disclosure must be made. More importantly, the staff concerned should inhibit himself or herself from any direct or indirect participation or involvement in any of the transactional process flow and should not sign any paper or document related to the transaction.
Whistleblowing policy. To complement the 7 policies already discussed, and for us to achieve and maintain the highest standard of integrity and honesty, professionalism and impartiality, service excellence and efficiency, we have likewise adopted the company's whistleblowing policy. This policy provides implementing procedures, reporting channels, and internal controls that are meant to assist and encourage the reporting of any misconduct, malpractice, or any irregularity in the operation of Mahatimid or in the actions of its hospital staff.
These are the best practices on whistleblowing that we have adopted. 1. We champion non-retaliation and confidentiality. 2. We provide adequate protection to the whistleblower. 3. Whistleblowers are free to choose the reporting channel that they are most comfortable with. 4. The compliance officer should have immediate assessment and dialogue with the whistleblower. All of these will foster the creation of a culture of trust within the organization, which in turn will encourage the reporting of illegal, unethical, or non-ideal behavior. There is a need for you to be fully apprised of all the important provisions of the 8 policies. All the policies are available on the SharePoint.
Please study each of the policies. Doing so will give you knowledge of what is expected from you in any given situation, so you may be properly guided and you will be able to observe the rules and procedures laid down therein. All 8 policies complement each other and are meant to achieve the objectives of a good compliance program: prevention, detection, correction.
It is our hope that you will be our committed partner in achieving the goals and objectives of our compliance program. In doing so, we will not only end up with an ethical organization that is characterized by its commitment to integrity, professionalism, compassion, and teamwork, but is likewise defined by its excellence in service.
Through your commitment to this compliance program, you will be an effective partner in enhancing the overall value of Mahatimid and the MPHHI group of companies. Thank you for your time, support, and your commitment.
Keep safe!